So we're going to bring on our first guest, and she is no stranger to Black Authors Matter TV. She's been on for the last couple of books that she released, and then she has a new book out called, and I already have my copy. It's called What You Leave Behind. I haven't read it yet, but it is on my to be read shelf. So, Wanda Morris, welcome back to Black Authors Matter TV. Oh, go ahead and unmute so we can hear you.
There we go. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
no problem.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And you've been doing a lot of writing because you had books back to back that you released, and Rhonda is joining the show now, and
Hey,
so
Rhonda, how are you?
to see you too. But
Wonderful.
our book club read both of your books, your other
Oh,
book, All Her Little Secrets and Anywhere You Run, and Anywhere You Run,
mhm.
and they got high ratings. In fact, I forgot which one we read first, but after we read the first one, they wanted to read your other one because it was so good.
Thank
So
you.
yeah,
Thank
I
you,
think
club members.
yeah, I think that we read the Anywhere You Run first.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't that the first one that came out? Did Anywhere You Run come out first?
No, all her little secrets came out first. So
Okay, I became
red book.
aware. Okay, I
Yeah, that
became
one came out
aware
first.
of Anywhere You Run first.
Oh,
And then we looked at the synopsis and we said, oh, she has another book. So let's read that one too. So I can't wait to dig into this one. Now, I've noticed you have Georgia is a big part of your stories.
hmm
And I see that you live in Atlanta.
I do.
So, are you a native to Georgia?
You know what? I feel like I am. I've been here for over 30 years now. I moved down here right after I got out of school. And I met my husband 1 week after I moved down here, and he's a native of Georgia. So,
Oh,
yeah,
you met him the 1 week after moving there. Well, so that was I guess meant to be one of those.
I guess so. It's
Yeah.
been over 30 years now. So,
So yeah, I noticed Georgia is runs through your book. And the first one I read was historical.
okay. So that was Anywhere You Run. Yeah.
Right. And the second one was contemporary.
Yes.
And now is this one a mixture? Is this one
You know
kind of
what? It has references to history, and it
okay?
actually opens up with a prologue of a story that has been passed down from slavery and what happened at a place in Low Country, Georgia called Dunbar Creek. And after the after slavery, not slavery itself, was was done away with, but there was a law passed, I believe it was 1807 or something around there, that said ships couldn't bring Africans to this country for the purposes of enslavement. And so the slave ships were supposed to stop. Obviously, they did not. And so clandestine slave owners would still bring ships in, and they would slink them in through little back rivers and so forth. And what happened at Dunbar Creek is that a group of slaves took over this small schooner and kind of threw the ship's, captain and so forth overboard. But when they got to land, then the slave owners were there and put them in chains. And a group of these slaves refused to go and live in bondage. And so they just walked back out into the water and drowned.
Wow.
And so
I
the book
heard about that.
I think I've
yeah,
heard that story as well.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, is this did this only happen there, or did it happen in more than one place that you know of?
You know what? It probably happened somewhere else, but there is a landmark, and it's a pretty famous place here in it sits in Georgia on St. Simon's Island, which is down near Brunswick.
Okay. And you mentioned low country. Normally, when I hear the term low country, it's referring to South Carolina, but the states are
You know what?
adjacent to each other. But
Yeah,
so,
actually, low country is considered, the low country quarter is considered from northern Florida up through the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina.
Yeah, I've
oh,
heard of
okay.
Savannah considered part of the Low Country as
Mhm.
well,
Yeah,
because it's
Okay.
closer to the coastal area.
right,
Mhm.
right. So North Florida up through Georgia and the Carolinas is considered low country.
Right. It's kind of like we hear during the Middle Passage that people jumped overboard rather than be enslaved.
Mhm. Yeah,
So them walking into the water it's kind of similar act in terms of just
yeah.
refusing to live that way.
Right. And so the story that kind of launches the story. So that's the historical reference, but it's to give the reader some context for why this particular story is so important because it deals with heirs property, which is a legal concept that says if you die without a will, or some sort of legal disposition of your property, then everyone that you're related to can inherit a fractional share of your property. And all it would take is one person that's related to you that inherits this fractional share to sell theirs, and then they can force a partition sale. So property that's been in your family for decades, for generations, can be sold right out from under you. Even if you live there and the person doesn't, you pay the taxes. And so a lot of unscrupulous real estate developers will use this to their advantage, and they'll dangle a few $1,000s in front of a relative who's strapped.
Right.
And pretty
Yeah.
soon they force a partition sale, and that's how they get land. There is a documentary that's on Prime Video now called Dollar Tree Road, and it tells the story of these two brothers who were locked up in prison for nearly 9 years because they refused to turn over their land that a real estate developer had gotten in this shady kind of manner.
I was just writing
Mm.
down the documentary so
Very,
I could look it up.
it's
Yeah,
very,
you said it's on Prime?
yeah, it's on Prime Video now. Yeah, it's
Okay,
very
I'll
good.
have to look for that as well. There's been a lot of really good movies on Prime lately.
Yeah, there hasn't there? They really
Yeah.
a game. Yeah.
Yeah, the different streaming services they're doing a lot of the same things, but then every now and then they'll do something different. And
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
No, they're doing the thing that they're doing the same is they're not showing a lot of the same movies, but they'll show that one popular thing that everybody wants to see, and you can only get on that one streaming service. So
Mm.
you wind up having a whole bunch of streaming services because you wanted to watch that one thing. That's how we ended up with Disney Channel because we wanted to watch Hamilton.
well, you can always cancel. I'm the
Oh no,
queen
well
of the
no,
free
we
trial.
kept it because
You
we
kept it.
watched other things on it, but that was what
Okay.
attracted us to Disney.
To Disney. Okay. Well, I don't have Prime. I wait for my annual 30-day free trial. And so I have a list. So when I do the free trial, I watch the things on the list. And then
We are a movie watching family. We have all well, not all of them, but we have a lot of streaming services.
yeah. Well, I have
We're
more than my
yeah.
share. I just don't want to do Prime. It's like my protest on Amazon where I don't want to be captured.
Yeah.
I don't want to be totally captured by Amazon. So so it's that's why I don't have. But no, I have Hulu and Netflix and Max, which is HBO, and also has MGM. And then I have cable. All this stuff is it adds up.
It
Um,
does, but I'm not getting rid of cable. I know everybody's cutting the cord, but I'm keeping my
People
cable.
say that, but it's all well. See, it's like what you said. There's the one thing, that you want to see that if you don't have cable, sports is it for me. You can watch sports other places, but I'm a big football fan. And so I even had NFL tickets for one season, but it's so expensive. So I
It got too
stopped.
expensive. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
want
it
it.
got too expensive. But that's how much I like football. So but anyway, we're digressing. So
Yeah, back to the book. So
and
what you need to hide
it
about?
happens sometimes. So how has the response been to the new book? But I also want to know, because I haven't looked at your review count for the other titles, the ones that you've had in the past. But did you get a 3-book deal when you started, or did you have a 2-book deal and then they did some more? How did your initial uh arrangement occur? Since these are your first 3 books, correct? Is that true?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So
And
I'm just
so
wondering, did they do one two? They normally do two when they sign you.
so all her little secrets went to auction, meaning that several publishing houses wanted to purchase it. I went
Okay.
with HarperCollins and they made me a 2-book deal.
Okay. Okay. And then did they do another one for the new book or
They did a 1-book deal for this 3rd book.
okay. Okay. Because a lot of our viewers are authors and we'd like to provide them with information on how the publishing industry works. So if they did you have an agent when when your book went to auction?
I did. Now, I know some people who publish very successfully, self-publish,
Mhm.
publish without
Yeah.
an agent. I know that I didn't have the wherewithal to do my own marketing and publicity and all that goes into publishing a book, because it's not just writing a book, then you got
No,
to get out
definitely
and
not.
sell it, right? And at the time that I wrote my first book, I was still practicing as an attorney. Um,
Right.
so
Okay.
my time was limited. So I knew that I wanted an agent and big 5 publishers won't look at you unless you have an
You
agent. There
haven't
are some that will take unagented writers. Um,
occasionally, but
but
it's
for the
rare.
most part, yeah, but for the most part, yeah. So I had an agent at the time that I
Well,
got.
I'm really glad that you point that out because I often, as a book coach, I often get people who ask me whether they should go traditional or whether they should go self-published, and
Mhm.
then whether they should get an agent. And then some people say they want to do everything themselves because they don't want to pay all those. It's just like you said, if you don't have the wherewithal, or maybe you don't even have the time, you might have the wherewithal, you might know how to do it all, but you may not have the time to do it. And so it's
Right.
good to get help. So I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah, yeah, because it takes a lot. And you want here's the thing too. I've read some self-published books that I really, really love and I chat up, but here's the thing about it. When you self-publish, make sure that you do it in a professional manner, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
that means make sure that your cover looks good, make sure that you get a proofreader so that your book doesn't have typos, make sure that you are getting the word out about your book. So that means you have to have publicity. You need to talk to, bookstores and, bookstagrammers. That means you need to do your own marketing. So there's a
Mhm.
lot that goes into it. And not only can you do it, you want to make sure you do it well so that your book looks very professional.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, getting the help that you need to make sure that you are presenting yourself in
Mhm.
the best light possible is huge. Yes, you can do it all yourself if you want to be up all night. If you if you want your product to look thrown together, do it all yourself and save that money. Go ahead and do it. Do you, boo. But if you are trying to compete with the traditionally published authors, if
Right.
you are trying to get into certain spaces, you're going to have to get the help that you need to do it and do it correctly.
Right, right. Agree wholeheartedly. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Now your first book, All Her Little Secrets, it was about a lawyer. So
Yeah.
for that, when you were able to weave your profession into the storyline in terms of just the knowledge of what happens in with law offices and that kind
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
so. Mm.
Yeah, that book, I I tell people I didn't really stretch myself that far in creating that character because a lot of this stuff, well, I won't say a lot of stuff. There are some things that occurred in that book that I actually lived through. And so, going into an upscale boutique with my girlfriend and getting racially profiled, check, that happened to me. Getting dressed down in a meeting in front of other colleagues and somebody's wagging their finger in my face, check, that happened to me. And so in a way that book was kind of cathartic for me. Like I was kind of getting all that frustration out. Now, I have never killed anybody. So
Well, that's
that's
good to
the
know. Thank
fiction
you for
part.
that, girl. Thank you for letting us know.
Seriously, people will say, well, what part? No, no, that is the fiction part. That's the fiction part of the book.
Well, you didn't tell us that it was never a time when you thought about it. Some situation, some people can take you there in the professional world, and
Ooh,
sometimes
child.
it can be business world can be more ruthless than just your normal situation a
Yep.
lot of times because it's money involved, and reputations and egos and all of that.
I agree.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what took you from, and we may have asked you this when you came on, because you've been on the show for all three books. So what took you from the law firm, the lawyer, the corporate lawyer to anywhere you run? What like
You know
made
what? It's
like
so funny. I had just finished up, just finished writing All Her Little Secrets. And it actually takes about a year from the time you turn the book in to the publisher to the time it's actually printed and sitting on shelves. And so I had just turned that book in, the first book in to the publisher, and my editor said, well, what are you going to write next? You got to write, All Her Little Secrets Part 2. I want to know what happens with the lease. And
okay.
so at first I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do that. But we had just come through the 2020 election. And you already know it was all that noise about, voting, and the big lie. And, I just started thinking to myself, how is it that 60 years ago we had these same issues around, voting suppression and voting rights, around gay and lesbian rights, around a woman's right to choose, you know,
Mhm.
sex discrimination, racism. It's like it seemed very, very much like 2020 in 1964. And I thought, maybe I'll write something around voting rights. And I couldn't figure out a contemporary way to do it. So I decided to just kind of point up the parallels between what happened in 1964 and how we're still fighting those same fights in
Right.
2022 when that book came out. And so I'd never written anything historical, so people tell me that was a little gutsy, but I did a lot of research.
It's pretty aggressive to do historical because it takes a lot of research. Was
Right.
that a challenge for you?
It was actually a challenge, but not for the reason you think. Like, it wasn't a challenge because it was so much work to do. It was a challenge because going back and reading those stories of what Black and brown folks went through to get the right to vote, to be able to sit at a lunch counter and eat a sandwich, just reading those stories. And if you recall, that book opens up with what happened with three young men who were civil rights activists,
Yes.
Blacks, to get the right to vote. And so doing research and seeing the pictures, and I actually went back and read the FBI files on the investigation into the death of Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman.
Mm, okay.
Reading that stuff was challenging
Mhm.
because you cannot believe how inhumane people can be and treat one another. And that
Right.
was always a challenge for me. So some days I would research and then I would have to put it away because it was just,
You had to
it was too
Too
decompress.
much.
much.
Yeah.
It was too
Mhm.
much.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like watching some of the historical movies. Um, Mississippi Burning is
Mm-hmm.
centered around that murder, and I think I've seen it once. I don't think I've seen it twice all the way through. Like
Well,
it's just so heavy,
It is heavy.
but you
Yeah.
know, but it's real. But the meanness
I think
of
that would
the
be the
people.
challenge for me because, yes, it would be heavy, but at the same time, I'd be reading it like, okay, I need to depict this in my story. I need to depict that. For me, I would have to edit back so much because I would want to crush so much into that story.
Well, that's the thing about it too with research. When you're researching for a book, there's so much stuff that you
Yeah.
could put into the book, but you know you're limited by page
Hmm.
count.
Hmm.
And so, there were stories because I actually wanted to explore just kind of the women in the civil rights movement. But again, I was limited to page count, and then I write thrillers. And so the book has to be kind of punchy and move fast. But yeah, I have so much research. I think I might actually go back one day and write another historical
There
piece.
you go. You have enough information already.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, in any way you run, what made you have the young lady? Because this is in the beginning, so it's not going to be a spoiler. What made you have her in a romantic relationship with the white guy? Like
It's so
what?
funny because after that book came out, somebody said, you know what, you got a theme running. Like, why do you have black women with white men? Because that was the case in the first book. I did that in Anywhere You Run because I wanted to highlight the complexities of what it was like to be a Black woman. Because and I don't think this is a spoiler, but if you remember the young man she was dating, the question there was, did he really love her or was he just kind of fantasizing, right? Because remember, he butt heads with his father, and his father
Mhm,
was a big segregationist.
mhm,
And so this man may or may not have just been using her, as a pawn in whatever kind of dynamic he had with his father. And so I wanted to point out that not only that, but this woman was desperate to get out of town. And so
yes,
she
she was.
used whatever means that she needed to. And if that meant pretending that she liked a white guy, she was going to do it.
Now
Um,
he seemed the way you wrote it, he seemed to be, you know, in love with her, or at least uh, a strong like. He seemed to be clearly put off when it didn't work out the way he wanted it to. I'll say it like that. So that way I'm not spoiling the plot. They're both books are very good, and I'm sure this one is going to be too. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. But I just thought that was an interesting way because you there's not a lot of interracial romances back in the 60s
no,
that we,
there were not.
not an actual romance. Now, black women being raped were
And keep
raped.
in mind too, they had to be undercover. Like,
Yes, they
remember
did. They
when the
couldn't be out in the
police,
open.
right, when the police stopped them, she had to pretend like she was his maid.
Right.
Right.
Like, how
And
does
that's
that make sense?
realistic for that
And that's
time. You
realistic.
would have
Exactly.
had to do that or ride in the back seat
Right,
or, that would have to be social separation.
right. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind
Mhm.
of deep.
Yeah. But you did a good job of it
Thank
was
you.
an edge of your seat type plot
Thank you.
where,
Well,
yeah.
there's a little romance in what you leave behind too.
Okay.
Like a second chance love story. I love second chance love stories. So
Okay.
um, yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but Dina Wood gets herself in a big old mess. She's grieving, she's just gotten through a messy divorce, and She's just been fired from her job at a law firm in Atlanta. And so she decides to go back home to Low Country, Georgia, and kind of, get her footing together, get into a better headspace. And she encounters an older gentleman who's living on a trailer on some very expensive property. And she goes, and he shoos her off with a gun, tells her never to return. She can't get him out of her head. She goes back the following week. The old man is gone, the trailer is gone, and there's a for sale sign on his property after he said he would never sell it. So she goes snooping around and she gets caught up in a really deadly quagmire. Yeah.
Okay, well, it sounds like a good, I might have to move this one up
I'm
in
about to say,
my
sounds like a
best
page
list.
turner. I
have
like it.
My shelf is so full, but it sounds like a really intriguing plot. And I so enjoyed your other two books.
Thank you.
I thought they were really good. Now, are you going to continue to write these thrillers that have this either legal aspects to them or historical or sometimes both? Are you still
I am working on my fourth book right now.
okay?
And I think I have found the thing. I don't think I know. I have found the thing that I really love and enjoy doing. And I don't see myself stopping. I just,
Okay. Well,
I told my agent, I said, somebody's gonna have to
okay.
come and pry the pen out of my cold dead hand. I just want to keep writing. I just want to keep writing.
Well, you found a sort of a sweet spot where your books are not exactly like anybody else's.
Oh, thank you. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, you
That
have.
is such high praise.
I'm an avid reader, so your books are not like anybody else's.
Thank
And
you.
that's a testament to
Well,
good
fingers
imagination
crossed
and writing
for
skills.
Thank you.
Okay.
Fingers crossed for my next one, because my next one deals with a middle-aged woman. She's like 50. She's going through menopause. She's going through it, y'all. But I always put my protagonist through it, don't I?
Yeah, that is true. Well, What You Leave Behind by Wanda Morris is available wherever books are sold. I know that already. And you can't go wrong reading any of Wanda's books.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you want something that you can kind of immerse yourself in and really get taken away with the story, then your books are it. So thank you so much for being back on the show. We really appreciate
Thank you
you
so much for having me. It's always such a treat to talk with y'all.
Okay.
It was great talking with you. And
Yes,
best wishes on all you're doing right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate
Okay.
you.
Good night.
Good night.